Franz Joseph Haydn was born on March 31, 1732 in Austria. The great composer is known as the father of the symphony and the string quartet. He was among the creators of the fundamental genres of classical music, although his fame was overshadowed by other composers like Beethoven and Mozart. He is still one of the greatest musicians to have ever lived.
His influence upon later composers is immense. With his close friend Mozart and his apprentice Beethoven, he established the forms and styles for the string quartet and a symphony during the 18th century. Although unlike Mozart and Beethoven, he lived a full life in a tortured position, he was not.
In 1740, the young Haydn was sent off by his parents in Vienna and sang in a church choir, learned to play various instruments, and obtained a good basic knowledge of music. When he was 7, the musical director of St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna invited him to serve as chorister at the Austrian capital's most important church.
He stayed at the choir school for 9 years, acquiring an enormous practical knowledge of music by constant performances, but, to his disappointment, receiving little instruction in music theory. When he was 14, he pranked his fellow choirmates and cut their wig. He also reached puberty at this point, so his voice changed, and so with these reasons, he was expelled from the church choir and choir school.
With no money and few possessions, Haydn, at 17, was left to his own devices. He went through with odd musical jobs. Meanwhile, he undertook a course of self-instruction through the study of musical works and of leading manuals of musical theory. A fortunate chance brought him to the attention of the Italian composer and singer teacher Nicola Porpora, who accepted him as an accompanist for voice lesson and corrected Haydn's compositions. With persistence and energy, Haydn made progress.
Haydn soon became an assistant to composer Nicola Porpora in exchange for lessons, and in 1761, he was named Kapellmeister, a court musician at the palace of the influential Esterhazy family, a position that would financially support him for nearly 30 years. Isolated at the palace from other composers and musical trends, he was, as he put it, forced to become original.
While Haydn rose in the Esterhazy family's esteem, his popularity outside the palace walls also increased, and he eventually wrote as much music for publication as for the family. Several important works of this period were commissions from abroad, such as the Paris Symphonies, 1785 to 1786, and the original orchestral version of The Seven Last Words of Christ, 1786.
Haydn's famous works include the Farewell Symphony, in which there were string quartets and instruments that get quieter as the performance continues. While there being a surprise symphony at the end. He also has some other great works like the London Symphonies and the Serenade.
Already well known and appreciated in England, Haydn's concerts drew huge crowds. He would return to London again in 1794 when a new Esterhazy prince let Haydn go. Haydn returned to Vienna in 1795 and took up his former position with the Esterhazys, although only part-time. At this point, he was a public figure in Vienna. He was making frequent public appearances. With his health failing, his creative spirit outlasted his ability to harness it.
During the siege of Vienna on 1809, Napoleon's forces overtook the city. They launched an attack and bombarded his neighborhood, rattling the windows and doors of his house. He called out in a loud voice to his alarmed and frightened people, "Don't be afraid, children. Where Haydn is, no harm can reach you." But before Haydn took his last breath and entered the choir halls of heaven, he played his last piece, the Emperor's Hymn, from morning until midnight, in which later he died peacefully in his deathbed on 12:40 a.m., May 31, 1809.